Her name was Lexi Dunn. Some still remembered her from the 2015 American Ninja Warrior National Finals, the woman who scaled the mega wall as if she'd been born with claws. Others had never heard of her, and that was perfectly fine. Years had passed. She had moved to a new city, changed her lifestyle, and tucked that chapter of her life away in a box she had no intention of reopening. These days, Lexi lived in the mountains. She trained a handful of athletes, offered private coaching sessions, and dodged cameras with the same agility she once used to chase them. It was a kind of peace she had earned through grit, sweat, and a few scars that didn't show up in photographs. It was on a chilly October morning, with fog dragging long shadows across her cabin porch, that the email arrived. Subject: a special opportunity for a legendary athlete. Sender: Donovan Hale. Seeing that name made her stomach tighten. Donovan Hale wasn't just anyone. He had been her first major sponsor, back when she barely had equipment to train. A former TV producer who transitioned into elite sports events, Donovan was sharp, charismatic, and dangerously persuasive. Even after all these years of silence, his name still stirred something in her, a strange mix of admiration and wariness. The email was polished and to the point. An invitation to serve as a special judge at a high-level endurance competition, gathering young sports prospects at an exclusive resort near Colorado Springs, all expenses paid, isolated, serene, safe, a chance, he said, to inspire the next generation. She should have declined. But it was the final line that unraveled her. The world still needs women like you, Lexi, and I still believe in what you stand for. She wrestled with the decision for days. Then, eventually, she accepted. Maybe it was vanity, maybe boredom, or maybe, just maybe, there was still a part of her that craved the tension in her bones. That quiet anticipation before a challenge. That electric, breathless moment when the adrenaline hits. Something a peaceful life could never fully replace. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for what was waiting there. Lexi arrived at the resort just as evening settled in, the sky streaked in shades of burnt orange and deep violet over the Rocky Mountains. The winding mountain road had been lined with towering pines that swayed like ancient sentinels. Her GPS had lost signal nearly half an hour earlier, and the last gas station she'd passed was more than 20 miles back. It was the kind of isolation that could either soothe or unsettle the mind. The iron gates creaked open slowly, revealing a large, sleek, modern structure surrounded by an eerie stillness. Patio lights had already been turned on, but there was no music, no laughter, none of the usual buzz one might expect from a sports event, just the cold whistle of wind passing between the trees and a silence that felt like it was holding its breath. Donovan was waiting at the entrance. He looked exactly as she remembered him, tall, with perfect posture, a neatly trimmed beard, and eyes too dark to give away real emotion. He wore a wool blazer over a black sweater, his smile calm, composed, the kind of smile that suggested he always knew more than he let on. Lexi Dunn. In the flesh, he said, spreading his arms as if to hug her, then stopping just short. Seems time hasn't touched you. A more honest compliment would be to say the opposite, she replied, her tone cool. He chuckled politely, but his eyes stayed cold. The lobby was too beautiful to be so empty. It had the sterile elegance of a place designed more to impress investors than welcome guests. Digital fireplaces flickered behind glass walls, polished hardwood floors gleamed beneath artificial lighting, and oversized panels displayed the names of invited athletes in heroic fonts. Everything felt overly staged, more for show than function. The other judges will arrive tomorrow, Donovan explained as he led her through a corridor to a more remote wing of the building. But I wanted you here first. I wanted a chance to speak privately. At reception, a pale-skinned woman with a fixed smile handed Lexi a keycard and a plastic badge. Lexi didn't ask why her badge was printed in red while the athletes' badges, displayed behind the counter, were white. She didn't want to seem paranoid. Not yet. You'll be staying in the West Wing. It's more private, Donovan said cryptically. Ideal for someone who prefers silence. The hallway that led to the rooms was dimly lit, with only faint floor-level lighting casting distorted shadows along the walls. The air was dry, yet filled with something intangible, an undercurrent of fatigue, or maybe tension. On her door, a plaque bore her full name, written by hand. It sent a small shiver down her spine. Inside, the TV was already on, looping an institutional promo video for the event, young athletes smiling as they overcame challenges and obstacles. The audio was slightly distorted, as if recorded over an old tape. One moment stood out. An athlete's face froze on screen, staring directly into the camera, or perhaps at her. Lexi pulled the curtain shut and turned off the TV. Later that evening, Donovan invited her to dinner at the resort's empty restaurant, just the two of them. A lone waiter served their food quietly, never making eye contact. They ate under dim lights, as though the staff were conserving electricity or monitoring them discreetly. Donovan spoke at length about the athletes, most of them recruited from obscure programs, niche online communities, and underground sports streams. "We're targeting raw talent," he explained, "the kind of people the mainstream hasn't noticed yet, people we can mold." "And why me?" she asked. He smiled, calm and practiced. "Because you're living proof that authenticity still sells. And," he paused for effect, "because you see things others don't." It struck her as vague at the time. Later, it would haunt her. When Lexi returned to her room, something felt off. The hallway carpet in front of her door showed a slight indentation, as if someone had stood there for a long time. The doorknob was faintly warm to the touch. Inside, a faint fragrance hung in the air, one that wasn't hers. She didn't move for a moment. She just stood there, listening. And that's when she noticed it. The central heating, which had been humming gently since she'd arrived, had stopped. Cut off. As if someone wanted her to hear what came next, clearly. The first night in the resort left Lexi restless, her senses on edge. Little sounds slipped through cracks in the doors, faint creaks, distant whispers muffled by walls, and the lingering sense that something wasn't right. She'd learned early in life that her mind didn't invent ghosts, it detected threats. The next morning, trying to shake off the unease, she went for a light run around the resort grounds. In daylight, the place felt less hostile. Towering pines surrounded the property like solemn guardians, forming a dense, evergreen barrier that absorbed even the sound of her footsteps. When she returned, the athletes had started to arrive, young, energetic, and nearly too enthusiastic. Lexi greeted them politely as Donovan introduced her. Each one expressed how honored they were to meet her. But something about the way a few of them looked at her, too focused, too rehearsed, made her wonder if they'd been briefed about her in advance. While Donovan delivered his welcome speech, Lexi felt eyes on her from the back of the room. She turned slightly, her gaze landing on a quiet athlete leaning against a pillar. Short hair, a focused stare, posture that suggested both discipline and defiance. When their eyes met, he looked away quickly. Her instincts stirred. There was something familiar about him, though she couldn't quite place it. That night, after a group dinner filled with forced cheer and hollow laughter, Lexi stepped outside for air. The night sky was blanketed with stars, and the cold mountain air stung her lungs just enough to remind her she was alive. As she passed the empty sports complex, floodlights cast long, narrow shadows that danced beside her steps. In the distance, she caught sight of movement, a figure slipping quickly toward a small, detached building. Her heart jumped. It was the same quiet athlete from earlier. Almost without thinking, she followed. She moved discreetly, silently, slipping through the shadows like she used to during stealth drills. The building was separated from the main resort by an overgrown path, rarely used. Its appearance was abandoned, forgotten, the kind of place people walked past without noticing. He entered and closed the door behind him, the sound barely audible but oddly final. Lexi waited in the dark, the cold biting through her jacket as she listened. Then came the voices. Muffled at first, tense. One voice belonged to the athlete, measured, restrained. The other was deeper, older, and sickeningly familiar. Her heart stopped. It was Donovan. She leaned closer to the building's cold outer wall, straining to catch pieces of the conversation. She can't find out now. Make sure she continues trusting me. The words were broken, scattered, but the tone was unmistakable. Donovan wasn't mentoring this athlete, he was managing something. Or hiding it. Panic pressed at her chest. They were talking about her. She stepped back slowly, trying not to make a sound, but as she turned, hurried footsteps approached from inside. Without hesitation, she took off into the trees, using every ounce of training to move without sound. Her breath fogged the air as she ran through the dark, limbs trembling, not from exertion, but from something deeper, betrayal. Back in her room, she locked the door and collapsed onto the edge of the bed, mind spinning. Why would Donovan conspire with one of the athletes? And why did that quiet young man's face feel so familiar? Desperate for answers, she grabbed her phone to search anything about Donovan, the event, the resort, but the screen showed nothing, no signal, not even Wi-Fi. She was cut off, exactly as someone had intended. That's when she noticed it, a tiny red light blinking on the side of the TV, a light that hadn't been there before. Slowly, she stepped closer. There, embedded into the frame, was a nearly invisible camera lens. A cold wave rolled through her chest. She turned off the TV, drew the curtains tighter, and sat in silence. There was no more doubt. She hadn't been invited to inspire anyone. She had been brought here for something else. And the worst part, the person she had once trusted most, had just become the most dangerous man in the room. It was exactly 3:12 a.m. Lexi hadn't slept. Her mind refused to shut down after what she had seen and heard. The tiny camera on the side of the television now felt more menacing, as if it blinked with awareness, watching her every breath, every thought. She needed air, space, clarity. Pulling on dark clothes that would blend into the shadows, Lexi moved with precision, silent as a whisper as she opened her door and stepped into the dimly lit hallway. The stillness of the resort wasn't peaceful, it was performative, as if the silence itself were choreographed. Her steps were deliberate, calling back muscle memory from years of night training, obstacle courses, and escapes that once thrilled her. Now, they were a necessity. As she entered the main hall, partially illuminated by soft emergency lights, her eyes adjusted quickly. That's when she saw it, something new. A large board on the far wall, covered in black fabric. Curious, she crept closer and peeled the cloth away. Behind it were photos, dozens of them, all of Lexi. Some were professional shots from competitions. Others, disturbingly, were private, frames pulled from videos never meant to be shared. Some appeared to be screen captures from training sessions, or even her old apartment. Each one had been printed, arranged carefully, obsessively. A chill gripped her. This wasn't admiration. This was surveillance. Obsession. A faint sound snapped her attention behind her. Movement. Just a flicker of shadow between the columns. Her pulse spiked. She ducked behind an armchair, holding her breath, muscles tight, body ready. Footsteps approached, soft, cautious. The shadow became a figure, slipping into view beneath the faint light. It was him, the quiet athlete. His eyes scanned the space as if he were also expecting someone, or hiding from them. Lexi stepped forward carefully, revealing herself but ready to fight. The young man turned quickly, startled, his hands going up in surrender. "Relax, Lexi. I'm not the one you need to be afraid of," he said in a whisper, urgent but calm. Her voice was firm. "How do you know who I am?" He hesitated, then answered, "Because we've met before. I'm Trent Carter. We competed around the same time." His name hit her like a jolt of electricity. Trent Carter, a name from the past, a strong competitor, reserved, talented. He had vanished suddenly, years ago, without a trace. And now here he was, standing in front of her, just as wary, just as hunted. "What's going on here, Trent?" she asked, narrowing her eyes but staying alert. Trent's expression turned serious. "Donovan isn't who you think he is. I came here for him, not for the competition. This whole event, it's a front. People have disappeared, Lexi. I was trying to find proof, but he found out. Now we're both in danger." The room spun slightly. Her mind struggled to keep up. Donovan, the man who once championed her, guided her career, was running something far darker than she had imagined. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed from above. Lights flickered on, dim but deliberate, like the start of a patrol. Trent's grip was gentle but urgent as he tugged her behind a pillar. "We have to go, now." Lexi nodded silently, following his lead. But before they could move, a voice broke the quiet. It echoed through the hall, smooth, steady, almost warm. "Lexi, come out. You know better than this." Donovan's voice. And just like that, everything in her froze. Lexi's heart pounded as she struggled to steady her breath, hidden behind the cold marble column. Donovan's voice still echoed through the vast, dimly lit hall. "There's no way out. Not this time." She glanced at Trent. His face was unreadable, focused, calm, but his eyes stayed locked on hers, intense. A piercing doubt stabbed through her chest. Could she trust him? Or was this just another manipulation? "Lexi, listen to me," Trent whispered, sensing her hesitation. "I know you've got no reason to trust me, but I'm the only shot you've got." Every instinct in her screamed for clarity. Donovan had been the one to open doors for her, to believe in her when no one else did. But now his voice, calm, confident, felt like a weapon cloaked in silk. She narrowed her eyes. "Why should I believe you, Trent? You disappeared for years, and now you show up with this story? Why now?" He barely had time to answer. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, approached from across the hall. Donovan's shadow stretched along the floor, his presence thick in the air. He spoke again, louder this time, voice smooth like oil. "Lexi, come on. You know Trent's always been a manipulator. He twisted the truth then, and he's doing it again now. But you and I, we have history." That last line hit a nerve. Yes, they had history, but how much of it had been real? She had to decide. Now. Lexi stepped forward slowly, emerging from behind the column. Trent stayed back, eyes wide as he realized her choice. She walked carefully toward Donovan's voice, muscles taut, senses sharp. He stepped out from the shadows like a stage performer, his arms slightly open, smile gentle. "That's it," he said softly. "I knew you'd make the right choice." But as soon as he spoke those words, something shifted. The warmth in his expression vanished. His smile turned cold. Hollow. A mask dropped. "You shouldn't have come here asking questions, Lexi," he said, voice now darker, more controlled. "This was supposed to be simple. All you had to do was smile for the cameras, shake a few hands. Now I have to clean up." Before she could move, hands grabbed her from behind, strong, tight. It wasn't Trent. Another man had appeared from nowhere, seizing her arm with practiced force. But Lexi reacted instantly. Her body took over. She spun sharply, twisted her wrist free, and delivered a hard strike to his chest, knocking him off balance. Donovan didn't flinch. He simply watched. "Still impressive," he murmured, "but not enough." More footsteps echoed behind her, fast, heavy. She turned. Trent. He moved with terrifying grace, leaping over a low bench, his body perfectly controlled. In seconds, he was beside her. "Do you believe me now?" he said, as two security guards charged toward them. There was no time to answer. Trent moved first, sliding low, sweeping the first guard's legs out from under him, disarming the second with fluid, precise movements. Lexi stepped back into a defensive stance, eyes scanning for Donovan, but he was already fleeing through a side hallway. Something ignited inside her, rage, instinct, focus. She took off after him. Donovan sprinted for the emergency exit, but Lexi cut across the dining hall, vaulting over the buffet table without hesitation. She leapt over a set of chairs, landing silently in front of him. He froze, just for a second. Then he swung wildly. She dodged easily, using his momentum against him. With one move, she caught his arm, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him against the wall. "It's over, Donovan," she hissed, her breath hot and furious. He struggled, but Trent was already there, steady and silent, watching. The hall went still again. Lexi kept Donovan pinned, heart pounding, muscles tight. Trent surveyed the downed guards behind them, nodding slightly in approval. "Looks like neither of us got rusty," he said, almost under his breath. She didn't respond. Her focus stayed on Donovan, the man who had once helped her rise, now trying to orchestrate her fall. And in that moment, she understood something terrifying. The most dangerous threats didn't always come from the shadows. Sometimes they wore the face of someone you trusted. The silence after Donovan's capture was suffocating. Lexi stood still, her body trembling with adrenaline and exhaustion, while her mind spun violently, trying to process the reality of what had just unfolded. Across from her, Donovan raised his head. His eyes were hollow, yet his lips curled into a slow, twisted smile. It wasn't the smile of a man who had lost. It was the smile of someone who believed he still held the upper hand. "You still don't get it, do you, Lexi?" he said softly, his voice slicing through the stillness like a blade. "This event was never meant to celebrate your greatness. It was meant to bury it." Lexi's chest tightened. Trent, standing at her side, went rigid. His expression was unreadable, but every muscle in his body tensed as Donovan continued. "You think you were chosen randomly?" Donovan leaned forward slightly, the calm in his voice becoming unbearable. "You were perfect, admired, trusted. The people loved you, Lexi, and that's exactly why you were the centerpiece." Lexi's breath caught in her throat. "Imagine it," he said, his tone turning theatrical. "A tragic accident, right in front of the cameras. One of America's most beloved athletes falling to her death during a live broadcast. The grief, the outrage, it would echo around the world." She shook her head slowly, her voice a whisper. "You're insane." Donovan's grin widened, but there was no joy in it, only calculation. "No, Lexi, I'm realistic. In our world, emotion is the currency. Pain is power, and your death would have triggered a movement, a global campaign. We already had it ready, the Solidarity Fund, the tribute documentaries, the outreach programs for at-risk athletes, the illusion of honor, but it would all funnel into one thing: control, influence, power." Trent stepped forward, his voice low and full of rage. "That other athlete, the one who got hurt, that was just a test run, wasn't it?" Donovan gave a slow, deliberate nod. "A trial. Necessary, imperfect, but useful." Lexi's mind reeled, flashes of the distorted video from her hotel room now making horrifying sense. The way one athlete had stared into the camera, the red badges, the silence. It had all been orchestrated. "You were my masterpiece, Lexi," Donovan continued. "You were real, raw, beloved. A martyr that no one would question. No staged scandal, no conspiracy theories, just heartbreak." Her voice trembled. "Why me?" His eyes lit with something she couldn't name. "Because the world believed in you. And when someone that pure dies, people lose a little of their own hope. And in that moment, they're vulnerable. They need guidance. They crave direction. And I'd be there. With the message, the brand, the movement. I would become the shepherd." Suddenly, the front doors burst open. Law enforcement stormed into the hall, weapons raised, voices shouting commands. Officers moved in swiftly to restrain Donovan. He didn't resist. He simply looked at Lexi as they cuffed him, his expression calm, almost proud. "You escaped tonight, Lexi," he said evenly, locking eyes with her one last time. "But my network runs deeper than you know. No matter where you go, you'll never be truly safe. Someday, when you least expect it, remember me." And just like that, he was gone. The doors slammed shut behind him, leaving only silence in their wake. Lexi stood frozen, her legs weak, every muscle tense. She didn't realize she was shaking until Trent gently placed a hand on her arm. His voice was steady, but gentle. "He's trying to break you mentally. Don't let him win." She nodded, barely. But in her heart, she knew the truth. Donovan meant every word. Something far bigger had been set in motion, something that wouldn't end with his arrest. Something she couldn't yet see, but would always feel looming behind her. And as the cold dawn light began to filter through the resort windows, Lexi knew with brutal clarity, this wasn't over. Not even close.
So, you made it this far. Impressive. My goal is to bring you videos that will make you think. What if this is actually true? Consider subscribing to get direct access to new videos and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next video. If you have the courage to watch until the end.